The morning began like any other for Ethan Carter. Before sunrise, he packed his young daughter Lily's lunch, walked her to the school bus, and then drove his aging black SUV toward the headquarters of Mitchell Global Industries. To everyone there, Ethan was simply the CEO's quiet personal driver, a hardworking single father who never complained, never showed off, and always arrived 15 minutes early. Claire Mitchell, the brilliant young CEO, respected Ethan because he was dependable, calm under pressure, and always placed her safety above everything else. What she didn't know was that Ethan wasn't just an ordinary driver. Years earlier, before tragedy claimed his wife and forced him to leave that life behind, he had served in an elite government protection unit where he received advanced, Secret Service-style defensive driving, tactical security, and executive protection training. He had buried that part of his past, determined to give Lily a peaceful childhood away from danger. Not even Claire knew the truth. That afternoon, Claire insisted on visiting a children's hospital to announce a scholarship program funded by her company, although her security team recommended postponing the trip because of anonymous threats received that week. Claire refused to disappoint the children waiting for her. A convoy of 3 black SUVs rolled through a narrow mountain highway surrounded by towering cliffs. Ethan drove the lead vehicle with Claire seated beside him, reviewing her speech on a tablet while discussing future charity projects. The atmosphere was peaceful until Ethan noticed something unusual in the side mirror. A dark SUV that had appeared several miles earlier was maintaining the exact same distance, while another vehicle suddenly accelerated from behind. His instincts, sharpened by years of forgotten training, immediately sensed danger. Before anyone on the security team could react, a deafening explosion erupted behind the convoy. Flames burst across the highway as the last escort vehicle flipped through the air, sending debris flying in every direction. Claire screamed as the rearview mirror filled with fire and smoke. Armed attackers emerged from hidden vehicles, blocking both ends of the road. While the other drivers froze in confusion, Ethan's expression never changed. His hands tightened on the steering wheel as years of buried training returned in an instant. With incredible precision, he slammed the accelerator, executed a defensive escape maneuver through a narrow gap between burning wreckage, and spun the SUV away from incoming gunfire. Claire stared at him in shock. The quiet single father, she believed, was only a driver suddenly moved with the confidence, discipline, and precision of someone who had spent years protecting the nation's most important leaders. As the attackers closed in, Claire realized the man risking his life to save hers had been hiding a past far more extraordinary than anyone could have imagined. Claire clutched the dashboard as Ethan expertly guided the SUV through the chaos. Bullets shattered the side mirrors, and sparks flew as rounds struck the armored doors. But Ethan's focus never wavered. "Stay down!" he ordered in a calm, commanding voice that sounded nothing like the quiet driver she had known. Without taking his eyes off the road, he pressed a hidden emergency button beneath the steering wheel, instantly sending an encrypted distress signal to the company's security headquarters. The attackers continued their pursuit with 2 black SUVs, convinced they had trapped the CEO. Ethan suddenly swerved onto a narrow service road carved into the mountainside, forcing the pursuing vehicles into a dangerous high-speed chase through sharp turns and steep cliffs. Claire stared at him in disbelief. "How do you know these maneuvers?" she asked, struggling to catch her breath. Ethan hesitated before answering. "Because I spent years learning how to keep important people alive." Before Claire could ask another question, one of the attackers pulled alongside them and attempted to ram their vehicle off the road. Ethan anticipated the move perfectly. With a precise defensive driving technique, he tapped the brakes, spun the steering wheel at exactly the right moment, and caused the attacking SUV to lose control. It slammed into the guardrail, rolled several times, and disappeared into a cloud of dust below the cliff. The second vehicle continued the chase relentlessly. Ahead, the road ended at an old suspension bridge that was barely wide. Enough for a single SUV, Claire looked at the bridge, then back at Ethan. "There's no way we'll make it," she cried. Ethan's expression remained calm. "Trust me." He accelerated toward the bridge as the remaining attackers closed in behind them. The wooden planks rattled beneath the tires, while cables swayed violently over the deep canyon. Seconds later, the attackers followed, believing victory was only moments away. Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, then made one final calculated decision. He steered onto the far side of the bridge just as emergency. Engineers, alerted by his earlier distress signal, activated the bridge's safety mechanism from a nearby control station. Massive steel barriers dropped into place, stopping the attackers in their tracks. Unable to brake in time, their SUV smashed into the barriers, ending the pursuit. Safe on the opposite side, Claire turned toward Ethan with tears in her eyes. "You're not just a driver, are you?" Ethan looked out at the mountains before quietly replying, "No, I was trained to protect people. But after losing my wife, I chose to become just a father." Claire realized that the humble single dad she had hired for his honesty had just risked everything to save her life, and his greatest secret had finally been revealed. Claire sat in stunned silence as emergency responders surrounded the SUV. Within minutes, helicopters circled overhead, police vehicles sealed off the mountain road, and Mitchell Global's private security team rushed to the scene. Every officer expected to rescue the CEO, but instead they found Ethan calmly checking the vehicle for damage before opening Claire's door. Despite everything that had happened, his first concern was making sure she wasn't injured. Claire stepped out with trembling hands, still unable to believe the man she had hired only months earlier had defeated a professional ambush almost single-handedly. The head of security hurried toward them, stopping abruptly when he recognized Ethan. His eyes widened with disbelief. "Agent Carter?" he whispered. Several older security officers turned immediately, their expressions changing from confusion to respect. Claire looked from one face to another. "Agent," she repeated. The security chief nodded slowly. "Ma'am," before he disappeared from public service. Ethan Carter was one of the youngest executive protection specialists ever assigned to high-risk government operations. He saved diplomats, judges, and foreign leaders during some of the country's most dangerous security missions. Claire stared at Ethan in complete disbelief. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked softly. Ethan looked down for a moment before answering. "Because none of that mattered anymore. After my wife died, the only person I wanted to protect was my daughter. I promised myself I would never return to that life." Before anyone could say another word, another officer approached carrying a recovered phone taken from one of the captured attackers. After examining its encrypted messages, investigators uncovered the shocking truth. The ambush had never been a random attack. It had been carefully planned by a powerful businessman whose company had recently lost a multi-billion-dollar contract to Mitchell Global. Claire realized that the attack had been designed to eliminate her before the company's biggest expansion announcement. The following week, looking at Ethan with gratitude and admiration, she quietly said, "You didn't just save my life today. You saved thousands of jobs in the future of this company." Ethan gave a humble smile. "I was only doing what any father would do, making sure someone else's family didn't lose the person they were, waiting to come home." Those simple words left everyone speechless. Even the hardened officers standing nearby lowered their heads in respect, realizing the greatest hero among them wasn't wearing a uniform anymore, but the heart of one had never disappeared. The following morning, news of the attempted ambush dominated every television channel and news website. Reporters praised the mysterious driver who had saved the CEO's life, but Ethan quietly slipped out of the hospital before sunrise, refusing every interview. His only destination was Lily's elementary school. When he arrived, he found his daughter waiting outside with her backpack. She ran into his arms without knowing how close she had come to losing him the day before. Ethan hugged her a little tighter than usual, silently grateful that he had kept his promise to always come home. Just as they were about to leave, a line of black SUVs pulled into the school parking lot. Parents stopped to watch as Claire stepped out, dressed simply in a navy blue coat instead of her usual executive attire. She walked directly toward Ethan and Lily. Kneeling to Lily's height, she smiled warmly and said, "Your dad is the bravest person I've ever met." Lily grinned proudly. "I know, he's been my hero forever." Claire then turned to Ethan, holding a small envelope in her hands. "The board of directors met this morning," she said. "They unanimously voted to make you chief of executive security for Mitchell Global. The position comes with a generous salary, a company home, complete educational support for Lily, and full authority over our global protection team." Ethan looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "That's generous," he replied quietly. "But I became a driver because it allowed me to be home every evening with my daughter. I won't trade being her father for any title." Claire smiled, almost expecting that answer. "Then I have another offer." She handed him a different document. "Same salary, same benefits, but you'll choose your own schedule. And Lily will always come first." Ethan looked at his daughter, who squeezed his hand and whispered, "Dad, I think Mommy would want you to help people again." Those words touched him deeply. After a long silence, he finally accepted the offer. 6 months later, Mitchell Global had become one of the safest corporations in the country under Ethan's leadership. More importantly, every evening, no matter how busy his day had been, he was home in time to have dinner with Lily. At the company's annual leadership gala, Claire stood before hundreds of employees and investors and ended her speech with words no one would ever forget. People believed Ethan Carter was just a poor single dad, just a driver. But true heroes don't need titles to prove who they are. Character reveals itself when everything is on the line. The audience rose in a standing ovation as Ethan, standing quietly beside his daughter, smiled with humble gratitude. He had never wanted fame or recognition. All he had ever wanted was to protect the people who mattered most. And in the end, that was exactly what made him a true hero. The end.